Lance, let's talk about your book.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we happen to have one right here.
Yeah, exactly. How convenient.
Yes.
Toronto and the Maple Leafs, a city and its team. Tell me about it.
Well, this isn't so much on ice stuff. I mean, I didn't want to go where many others, including myself, have gone. Talking about whatever 1967 ad nauseum. This is the relationship Toronto has with its fans, and this is something that goes back to the Irish immigrants who came in the middle 1800s from the potato famine. They came over here. It's cold weather. Everything's frozen. You know, they adopted a form of hurley on ice as their as one of their big sports. They wanted to meld in, and that's really gone right through many ethnic groups who've come to Toronto since then. The cold winter weather will bind us together, and as the song goes, and a lot of people in different backgrounds from the British Isles, and then going right through World War II and the post, the post-immigration years, the Italians, Portuguese, Asian, all the different countries who've come here, they've looked for a way to meld in with Toronto, and I think it was Mark Osborne, I think, and Peter Zezel who were telling me once they were big in the creation of the Canadian Multicultural Hockey League, and they said they would look at all the fans at Maple Leaf Gardens, see all different faces from all different races, and it made them think that Toronto is a different market. Now, certainly, haven't won a cup in many years, but I think more than say Montreal or the New York Rangers or any other Original Six team, Toronto has the hockey team and the citizens are much closer because of everything that happened off the ice.
So a lot of it's based on the cultural significance of the team and the way that Toronto's changed over the years as a city?
Yes, and another thing is this. Radio, the medium itself, sports on radio, happened a lot with Foster Hewitt. He was the first one to go on the air. He was the first one to tell people about this wonderful far-off place named Maple Leaf Gardens, and on cold prairie nights, not to get too soppy here, but you know what, they were the only game in town. The Montreal Canadiens had Quebec and a selection of Eastern Canada. Foster Hewitt was the first guy to go across the country with his broadcast, and he was very influential. I think in World War II, when there was a shortage of binoculars, when people thought there was going to be a West Coast invasion, he happened to mention it on the air that, if you have any spare binoculars, please send them, to your local Civil Defense Association. They were just inundated with all kinds of binoculars, and he had to say, okay, stop, we've got enough, thank you very much. And when they were building Maple Leaf Gardens, he said, if you want to find out about this, if you want to be not an investor in Maple Leaf Gardens, but want to find out more about this, remember, this is the middle of the Great Depression.
Right.
Everybody wanted the Leafs to play in a new rink. He said, send a dime in an envelope, and you'll get a prospectus about what this new rink. And they were just inundated with letters, snail mail in those days.
Yeah, of course.
With a little dime in there to to find out about Maple Leaf Gardens. But during the war, the Leafs were so intrinsic in the community fabric that the government would put all their major announcements about whatever, this battle, that battle, this shortage, that shortage, or whatever was going on, put it on the Leaf games because they knew everybody was gathered around to listen to Foster Hewitt. So that's the kind of effect they had.
So those are the type of stories that you tell in this book.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, the thing too is that Toronto, once upon a time, was a championship city that won 5 cups in the 40s and, of course, 4 in the 1960s, and that brought people together. That was a big, all those players and all the cultural things went behind the Leaf calendars, Hockey Night in Canada, all the famous writers and broadcasters, and a lot of that all came out of the Leafs winning. And when they haven't won for 50 years, sometimes those are the tales that are passed down from grandfather to father to son. And when you go to Western Canada, it's quite amazing. You'll see all these kids like your age, and how they have who've liked who have Leaf sweaters on. You think, wait a minute, you're doing that in Edmonton, and you've seen Wayne Gretzky, and in Calgary, you've seen the Stanley Cup, and in Vancouver, you've seen the Sedins, and yet you're that age, and you still have a Leaf sweater? Why? It's because my father and my grandfather listened to Foster Hewitt way back when.
Well, that's the thing about Leafs fans is that this isn't a scientific thing, but anecdotally, it seems like they travel across the country better than any other team. Maybe the Habs more because the French connection. So if you're French in whatever province, you might be drawn to them. But Leafs compared to the Senator. Like the Senators don't travel well in regards to their fans spreading out. That's Oilers maybe a bit because they won so many cups. But the Leafs are in sort of their own tier of dominating the country.
Yeah, you just you see it somewhat on TV, but now everywhere you go on the road, Matthews jerseys everywhere, right? It's kind of, I guess I would compare it to the Chicago Cubs, in that they just have they're everywhere. And in the book, actually, I talked to the president of the Cubs fan club.
Interesting.
And I was doing the story at that time. The Leafs had gone 47 years without a cup. The Cubs hadn't won, of course. They were coming up on their 100th anniversary of not winning a World Series. And the gentleman said, "Okay, yeah, sounds like a good story. Go ahead." He said, "How long have the Leafs not won a cup?" I said, 47 years. He said, 47 years? We eat that for breakfast in Chicago. Oh my God, try going 102 years without winning. But I don't think it'll be that long.
Well, that's the thing, and you're releasing this book at a good time. A lot of people are interested in the Leafs right now for obvious reasons.
Yes.
And the history is important to this team. You see it. You see it in the way that they salute military. The way that they
So they're a military team. They had the Conn Smythe, their founder, was a military guy. Chris Hadfield, the astronaut, his grandfather was an Army officer, and their first physical education.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, their first guy to adopt physical regimens like in the Army to try and improve them that way. A few members of the Leafs family were lost in World War II. The big thing was there's another story in there about a Lancaster bomber. They were under radio silence over Germany, and they would just to pass the time through the intercom. The pilot did a great Foster Hewitt imitation, so he would do this.
Wow.
He would imitate games to the point where people. The bombardier and the co-pilot were arguing over whether the play was offside because he did such a good, he shoots, he scores.
That's amazing.
Kind of thing. Yeah, and it goes right up. I was lucky enough to go to Afghanistan in 2008 with the Leaf alumni, and the sight of kids with flip-flops, shorts, an M16 over their shoulder, and a Daryl Sittler sweater walking around the base at Kandahar. And that really tells you how far the Maple Leaf reach goes.
No kidding. How long does this take to put together? Because one, you're covering a wide range of topics, over all these different years, and two, you're talking to all these people that are probably hard to track down, or they're not alive still.
Well, I would say it's 33% stuff I had written already that I updated, 33% of things that I'd done and hadn't written yet. I'd sort of sat around waiting for the
kind of banked.
For the banked. 33% is new interviews. People with like John Tory, the mayor, on his.
Cool.
Yeah, and Tory has a connection going way back to the original Gardens. And who else they speak to? A guy who does funeral arrangements that are Leaf themed. Who has as the dearly departed leaves, he's got the Hockey Night in Canada theme going, and pallbearers dressed in away Maple Leaf sweaters. I took note that. The funeral I did see had these 6 guys with black mourning jackets and away Maple Leaf sweaters because their dear friend had been with them for a long time. They probably saw many Saturday night games together. Sports psychologists. I talked to Gordy Stellick in the early days of sports radio, and just a wide range of people who all have something about that amazing connection with the Leafs. Births, deaths, marriages, architecture, women's rights. You would be amazed at how the Maple Leafs have sort of touched all those places.
And before you let everyone know how they can find the book, how they can purchase it, let's talk about Maple Leaf Gardens for a second, because I actually live like almost next door to it, but now it's a Loblaws, obviously, and I'm young enough to know. I never went to a game there or anything, but I watched games on TV when they were playing there. But like I can't really wrap my head around sort of the legacy, even though I literally am in the building like once a week.
It was the largest indoor gathering place in Canada for 3 or 4 decades. Everything happened there. It wasn't just the Leafs. Politics. They had war maneuvers there. They had great boxing matches. Everybody knows about the wrestling. The Toronto Marlies. It was Canada's first multi-use building, and they invented so many things. The score clock was invented there. The red light, the red goal light, separate penalty boxes. It was a site of major innovations in hockey, and of course everyone. I identified with it as a place on Hockey Night in Canada.
Yes.
You know, the perfect little theater, as my friend John Shannon calls it. You know, you could get up and see the guy get up right behind the Leaf bench and have to pass behind Pat Burns to go to the washroom. Little things like that. And yet the Hockey Night studio there was not much bigger than the little place we're in right now. It was a magical place. And again, even though the Leafs didn't win a lot of Stanley Cups, it was home to many people. And I had great interviews with Paul Morris, of course, the voice of Maple Leaf Gardens. Showed up one day for work when he was there. His father was actually the superintendent.
Okay.
But one night, started the '64 season, I think, the original PA guy, Red Barber, didn't show up for whatever reason. Paul went behind the mic. He never left it. He didn't miss a Leaf game from '63 until the second game of the Air Canada Centre.
Wow.
Because he went in there and wanted to see, you know, he wanted to be the link to the next one. But over, whatever, something like 100 years, the Maple Leafs have only had, since 1927, I guess, have only had 3 or 4 guys be their PA announcer. Red Barber, Paul Morris, Andy Frost, and Mike Ross, the current guy. So
wow.
That's a long legacy.
See, these are the type of things that you know that I don't know at all. Like your knowledge of the Leafs is pretty extensive.
Well, I jammed as much as I could into the book, so I hope people enjoy it.
Yeah, where can they find it?
Better bookstores, as they say.
Yeah.
It's published by ECW. A wonderful forward by Ron Ellis, the last Maple Leaf, a member of the last Leaf Stanley Cup team, and Team Canada '72 as well.
That's a good link.
You can get it on Amazon as well, and it's got a great reception. It's kind of like my White Album, I guess you could say. I've tried to put a little bit of everything in there, so I hope people enjoy it as much as I did writing it.
Okay, Lance. Thanks for coming in and talking Leafs, talking your book.
Thanks for having me on, John.